Welcome back, everybody, to another week here on the Whiskey Gingers podcast. I'm your host, Brandon. Chris, as always, is here. And we've got a special guest this week. We have my good man, Zach, from the Mile High Bourbon podcast. You can find them on Twitter at Mile High Bourbon. Zach, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you guys so much for having me on.
Yeah, it's tough for us. We always want to have guests on, and I'm sure you've realized the same thing. I mean, unless we want to stay up till 2 a.m. or wake up at 6, you're not finding too many podcast guests for whiskey. They're all across the pond.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, the only ones that I've found so far that I've managed to schedule was with one of the distilleries here, and that was everything fell exactly in line. Otherwise, it would have never happened.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because you would think like there's countries that have like absolutely no whiskey culture whatsoever, where you would think, okay, that's pretty hard to do. I mean, outside of like obviously you got Scotland for sure, Ireland. I mean, America has a really strong like whiskey and bourbon like footprint. It's weird that there's not more of this here.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like it's growing pretty quickly, but it's just not as much yet. So I'm excited to kind of watch it continue to grow.
I guess we're ahead of our time, and we're pioneers on the podcast for the American Whiskey Association here.
Yeah, exactly. I'll take that title.
That's what I choose to believe when I see our listener numbers. I just keep telling myself, like, you're early. The wave's coming.
Exactly.
Makes me feel better. So, we always start off the podcast, everybody who listens typically, we get into like the nuts and bolts and all of whiskey early. And then typically as we work our way through the glass, you're going to get a little bit more off the rails and, we'll start getting into God knows what. But off the bat, while we're still kind of all thinking sharp, why don't you take us through Colorado's whiskey of choice today?
So today what I've got is Old Elk. It is out of just northern end of Denver. They are relatively new compared to some of the bigger guys like Breckenridge or Stranahan's, but they've been around for a number of years so far. What I have is a single barrel select that is a wheated bourbon, cask strength. So proof on this is at 116.2. So sitting up there pretty high. A really good comparison.
I would say.
I tried this side by side with the Weller Full Proof actually, and a lot of similarities. A lot of things I like the Old Elk does better. Some things that I like the Weller Full Proof doing better as well.
Okay.
That's awesome. Sounds like it's going to be a good drink. And I see that you've had some before. Is it like a good favorite of yours?
Yeah. This is Old Elk is actually one that I've had a number of times. They're kind of became a standard for me after I found the distillery. One of the ones that really stands out. And then when they did the wheated single barrel selection, it had to become. Unfortunately, I only got one bottle of this single barrel, and so I'm kind of milking it. But it seemed perfect for this.
That's awesome. Well, we're happy to have you drinking it on the show. Clearly,
Yeah.
it meant enough to have him break the bottle out.
Yeah, absolutely.
It looks like you got a hell of a collection back there behind you. So let's just say, Chris and I happen to be in Colorado. We pop by the house. What's the whiskey you're offering people when they come through the door? What's the house whiskey at Zach's place?
Oof, that is actually a pretty tough call, but I think my go-to typically is going to be something from Talnua Distilling. They're out of Arvada, which is kind of northwest Denver. It is America's first single pot still whiskey, so very traditional Irish style. Head distiller, owner, Patrick, spent a lot of time in Ireland learning a lot of the process, even like going through old tax records to just learn how to make this whiskey, what they did in the past, and brought that all back to the U.S., launched up a pot still distillery, and has been putting out some absolutely spectacular product ever since. So if you're new to Colorado, that's one I like introducing people to, because it's not like a typical bourbon, like you're going to get a lot of American style, but it's on point, spectacular pour.
It sounds like you got a great selection of whiskeys out there that are Colorado based. I mean, we have a few PA whiskeys that we know off the top of our head. I'm sure there's more, but it sounds like you definitely got a couple really good distilleries up there.
Yeah, Colorado's craft distillery scene's been booming. I mean, it's really started to explode. We have a number of distilleries out here that are just constantly getting bigger and constantly adding more. So there's no shortage to choose from. That's for sure.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's an interesting contrast to the whiskey that we're doing today from Bluebird Distilling. It's actually their 4 grain bourbon whiskey, so it's like their take on your classic American straight bourbon whiskey. But what's kind of cool about Bluebird is one, I live up the street, and two, they used to have several locations around PA, and they did okay. They distilled some things themselves, but they were kind of more just like a cocktail bar at the time. And they bought this location, which is in Phoenixville, and moved all of their operations in under one roof. They started distilling everything in house, and it's kind of like it's kind of a weird story where usually companies as they get bigger, you see them branch out and add locations. They kind of took everything into like one roof and just focused on quality. And whenever Chris and I are looking to ball out a little bit or spend a couple extra bucks on cocktails,
it's the place to go.
Yeah, I mean, you can get one of the best old fashions I've probably got my hands on, and it's they don't dance it up too much. It's not smoked. There's not a ton of crazy garnishes. It's they let the bourbon do the talking, and it's crazy good. I don't drink it straight all too often because their concoctions are so great, but I mean it's still one I like to keep in the house.
Oh, that's awesome. That sounds great. I love the 4 grain style bourbon, so that's one I would definitely be interested to try.
Well, it looks like we're kind of holding Zach up here from enjoying his, so I'm going to get ours opened up. He came a little bit more prepped. Half the fun for us is we always like to watch me struggle with the packaging while we get this all going here. But, yeah, we're going to get this cracked open.
Oh, man, I wish you had the microphone. Typically what we'll do is we'll put the mic right up to the bottle, and you get that first bottle, pop, and you take the cork out, and it's so satisfying. But,
yeah.
I took a different car today. Long story short, the mic's in the other one, so we're doing it, like the cavemen did back when they had podcasts.
Yeah, with their really awesome bourbon selections and computers.
I've heard that they had some really good computers back then. I'll say the audio came through pretty good. That's still a satisfying sound, even on the microphone that you're using now. So
that's what we like to hear. Well,
absolutely.
Cheers to you, Zach. Thanks
cheers.
For joining.
Thank you.
That's good stuff.
That is really good. That is it's totally different. Even the last time I think I had it. I mean, I guess that's what when you small distill everything, it is a little bit different each time you go around.
Yeah.
Because the last one I had a lot more. It was smooth earlier on and a lot more kind of back end burn to it. And this one almost had kind of like the inverse. Like as soon as it hit, I could feel mouth starts tingling a little bit, and then it goes down almost borderline refreshingly.
It is. It's definitely good. And what's interesting about it for me is I think that you've had Bluebird more than I've had Bluebird.
I can walk there, so it does help.
So it definitely helps you. But in general, for me, I never knew on the menu what they were specifically putting in their old fashions or their mixed drinks that they have there. So it could very well be this specific whiskey, or it could be different. But I think this is amazing straight. I think that I would enjoy it either way. If they gave it to me in an old fashioned, I'd love it. If they poured it in a glass, I'd love it. I think it's a good whiskey.
It almost certainly has to be this one. I know they don't sell any outside liquors, so unless they have, another bourbon or another recipe they might use, it's most likely probably this one.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I know yours is old hat. Yeah, I mean yours inside out back. That's a glass of water.
I've had this one. I haven't had it for a while now, but I mean the thing that just kind of blows my mind about the high proof, but with the wheated, is just same kind of thing. How you're not really feeling that much of that alcohol hitting you too hard. That wheat mellows it out to a point that, again, I agree with that assessment. It's almost borderline refreshing. This is one that's awesome winter or summer, just because sometimes when it gets really hot, you have that the hotter whiskeys give you that burn. It's just not quite as nice when it hits 110 degrees dry heat out here in Colorado. But this one's one I can definitely sip on all the time. It's got some kind of floral, earthy notes to it on the mid, and the finish is just a sweet, long, enjoyable trip. So I do like this one a lot.
I think it's amazing that we can have this conversation in general, because it goes to show just how advanced these whiskey distilleries have come, because in the past, you think of whiskey and alcohol in general as being this really fire in your mouth kind of tasting refreshment, and now we've dialed it in so far. These companies have gotten so good that they said, yeah, no, we can get you to try different, find different tones and different hints of this flavor and that flavor, and it's going to actually wind up being refreshing instead of just fire in your mouth. It's very interesting. I know as we get into whiskey more, your appreciation for it pops up more. But I think in general, just the companies themselves also do a really great job nowadays at building a better product that's going to be more refreshing than it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely come a long way.
I definitely echo that sentiment for sure. It's impressive how much it's changed. Like, I know my palate's a lot different than it was when I first started drinking whiskey, and I've come a long way since the college days of whatever plastic bottle I could get my hands on. But
Bankers Club and whatever's around.
Yep, exactly. But it's amazing how much it's changed. One of the distillers I've spoken to out here, he said like one of the big driving forces behind what they do is the consumer, because there's so many people searching for that, that next evolution of it, that next big step in the quality and the production. It drives them to really push that envelope and find what they can do that's unique and approachable and all of those things. So I do think I agree. The distilleries have done an amazing job of just improving their product even over the last 5-10 years. It seems like it's just growing in quality.
Absolutely.
For sure. I will say there is still no better feeling for me personally than going out to a bar with your buddies, especially some of the guys who they're real tough guys, normally. And you go, all right, let's do a round of whiskey. And it is absolutely no way. It's like, oh, let's shoot whiskey. Can I get a lemon drop? You guys do a green tea, something like that? That does make you feel good when you drink it enough that you can just, and usually at a bar, it's JMO, it's Jack Daniels, it's whatever, and just take that back, straight face, go walk around. I mean, you feel tough. You really do.
Yeah.
I'll take a glass of whiskey neat anytime over a shot. I mean, if I'm shooting something, I want it to be cheap and dirty, because I'm not interested in spending $15 on a shot of something good when I can just sip on it instead. It doesn't make much sense to me. But you tend to find people doing that, and I don't get it. I mean, let's just flex on my bank account, I guess, and get a $20 shot for everybody at the table. I ain't that rich. I don't know about anybody else.
No.
Yeah, I'm not there.
Yeah,
it's actually, it kind of works out well having somebody from so far out of state, because our last episode I had my buddy on from New Jersey, and I was telling him about something that I thought was commonplace that Philadelphia does. It's called, they call it their citywide special. But basically what it is, PA is obviously known for Yingling. So you can go to pretty much any bar in Philadelphia and go, hey, can I do the citywide special? And it's a lager, Yingling, and whatever their well whiskey is, and it's typically around $6-7. Is that a thing anywhere else? I mean, is that Denver doing that? Anyone in Colorado doing something similar? Or?
I mean, most of the bars you can order a Boilermaker sounds kind of similar to that, but nothing that's not like a citywide special. And Yingling definitely doesn't exist out here. So
that I know for sure.
Yep, that's a shame.
It is. It's the nectar of the gods to us here.
It's just such a great lager overall. It's amazing. But I wanted to ask you, when you were chiming in a little bit on your whiskey background and everything, Zach, how long have you been doing the podcast, and how long have you kind of been realizing this whiskey thing is for me, and I want to be talking to the people about it?
So I actually worked at a pretty big liquor store out here for about 11 years. In that time, I discovered whiskey was kind of what I was mostly interested in. About 6 years ago, maybe almost 7 years ago now, I got to try Law's whiskey, which is almost the one that I had for today's pour, and would have worked out perfect because it's also a 4-grain bourbon. And had I known that, I totally would have selected that one. But I tried them when they were, brand new, just starting to bottle, like a 2-year-old product. And I'd gotten to try a lot of stuff in the buying process and all of that at the store. And they brought this one in, and it just was like, at the time I was still very new to whiskey and everything. So when they said bourbon, I'm like, oh, it's from Kentucky. They're like, no, bourbon doesn't have to. And, I start to kind of learn those little pieces. And I tasted that Laws, and I was like, this is something really special. They've got something great going on here, even as young as it is. Like, as it starts to age a little more, it's really going to come into its own. And they certainly have, but it kind of made me want to start the discussion, start talking about the whiskey. And then the website started. I went and did the New Belgium Brewing Tour. And while on that tour, there was one of the tour guides, they give you the samples, they have you sip everything, tell you the tasting notes that you get. And everybody's kind of nervous, who tastes what, raise your hand. Nobody's raising the hand. And so we tried this Imperial, and one guy finally raises his hand, and I don't remember what the note was because it was too long ago, but he said, he sips something, he tastes something like bananas or something like that. And the tour guide just goes, no, you're wrong, and moves on and talks about what it is. And I was like, I've found in all the times that I've sat and tasted whiskey, beer, or anything, some people taste things that I just would never even notice. Like their palate picks it up and mine doesn't. And so that was a big driving force behind starting the website and then eventually the podcast, is I want people to understand that you can get into this and you'll find what you like, and whether anybody else likes it or not, you found what works for your palate. So enjoy what you find, and all of your tasting notes are correct because that's what you taste.
That makes tons of sense.
It's interesting that you kind of had that same experience, because part of the reason that we started ours the way that we did was, one, we needed an excuse to hang out during the week and drink whiskey, and nobody looks twice if you're drinking whiskey on a Tuesday. But even beyond that, we started looking around at kind of the landscape, and it was, and everybody has their own thing, but I was looking on whiskey Twitter, and so much of it was either these really expensive whiskeys that were just kind of out of reach for someone drinking with their buddies, or it was the analysis was so deep where it left me wondering, are you enjoying what you're drinking, or are you doing a homework assignment? So we kind of thought we had a space. We were like, why don't we just hang and we'll drink a different whiskey every week. We'll do a little bit of analysis, but let's make it accessible to people who do this, who just like whiskey and want to try new things without having to write a term paper about it or go broke trying to do it. And it's kind of filled a nice niche.
Yeah. No, that's excellent.
Me look at whiskey totally different, because now instead of trying to find the best name brand, I just go in and find the first bottle that's calling out to me. And it could be $30, it could be $40. I mean, 50 is usually where we're kind of like, oh man, this is pushing a little bit. I'm not saying there's not good whiskey at those price points or above that price point. I just found I'd rather spend $30 a few times and find, let's say we see 10 whiskeys and 6 of them are really good and 4 of them really bad. Well, that's 6 new whiskeys that I know the everyday person can go out and I can recommend that to them and say, hey, if you're fresh to whiskey or you're not really sure what you want to get into here, you're not making a big financial investment. You're just getting into something that's going to be easy for you to buy and hopefully easy for you to drink based on our assessment on it.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so many, it's actually you kind of do the same thing we do with the local places. Oftentimes, these local distilleries, they're not going to be the ones that are 120, 150, 200 plus, because they are smaller. But that doesn't mean they don't put the same effort, thought process, love, passion, what have you.
Sometimes more.
Yeah, that these bigger ones do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you took the label off of a $40 whiskey brewed in state, by somebody who cares, and told someone it was $200, the average person's not going to have any idea.
No.
Yeah, not at all. Completely agree. I've actually done kind of a similar sort of take with that. I've got a couple of decanters, and so I'll go grab for a few people, I've poured a bottle out of a decanter and I've told them, this is from a big name brand distillery, super nice whiskey, pour it. And then they're sitting there like, oh my gosh, this is such a good pour. It's so great. And I'm like, it's actually this really affordable bottle right off the bottom shelf. You go into it without the expectations, and I find you enjoy a lot of these things a lot better.
Yeah, that's kind of what we've run into ourselves. I want to get to our let's drink about it topic in a second, but I've been meaning to ask you, what is the cheapest whiskey that you will go? What is, for me, the cheapest whiskey I've ever probably had was Banker's Club, because I went to a school in a small town in the middle of PA, and that was their well whiskey, and it tasted like turpentine. But it got me through. But I mean, now that I'm an adult, I'd never get it. What was your low point, your rock bottom as far as whiskey you would drink?
That would probably be Old Crow. Would be the one that was kind of that super bottom shelf.
Great.
Yeah, not exactly a great one. It was a St. Patrick's Day celebration right out of college, and they're like, we're loading up on whiskey, and I'm like, that sounds great. I come down there, and they're like, we got this Old Crow. I was like, that sounds horrible, but let's go. So,
It completed what you were looking to achieve there, I'm sure.
Yeah,
yeah,
you're looking at your butt. Is that plastic?
Yeah, it got the job done. I almost hesitate to say this on a podcast just because I really kind of want to keep the secret to myself, but one that I've found, and it's from Buffalo Trace Distilling, is Benchmark number 8.
Okay.
If you're looking for a bargain bottle that's really, really good, that's a heck of a find. So if it's not already flying off the shelves in Pennsylvania, scoop some up while you can.
Okay, yeah, because we've done some Buffalo Trace on the podcast. We found the one that because I did the whiskey for Yellowstone, which you can tell by Chris's shirt we're big fans. We found the bottle he did on Yellowstone, and it was delicious. We paid a little bit more for that. So I mean, the fact you can get something close for maybe bottom shelf pricing is that's a pretty hot tip.
Yeah, it's a really good one. I would say it's actually a go-to of mine for mixing for any cocktails or stuff. It is absolutely a standard for that. So
that's awesome. Thanks for the tip.
Yeah, good to know. Write that down.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got about 10 or so minutes left, and I wanted to definitely get into our "Let's Drink About It" topic for this week. So Chris and I's listeners obviously know that the last 10 minutes we're both half a glass in. It's when things start to loosen up a little bit. You start telling people what you really think. That's where "Let's Drink About It" came from. You're bellied up to the bar, a couple of buddies, a couple glasses in, and you're kind of airing out your grievances, letting people know what your opinions are. And we thought no better than having somebody from so far out of state to just do blind opinions of the opposite state. So if you met somebody from Pennsylvania, it's not me or Chris, it's just some guy on the street. What are you immediately assuming about that guy?
So there's 2 things that I really have picked up about Pennsylvania. One of them is Philadelphia sports fans, and the other one is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So that's kind of my baseline for Pennsylvania in general. I just kind of assume that's the level everybody's at, is that over the top passionate, absolutely, especially with sports, going to go way over the top. Everything is a huge deal. That's kind of my experience with how I picture Pennsylvania. Is just that all the time. So
I tell you, you're not, for the part of Pennsylvania that we shoot from. I mean, I live in a suburb of Philadelphia. Chris just slightly further out. You're pretty spot on. I mean, if you've of course seen Always Sunny, like the resting state of Philadelphia is probably Mac, and then it rises to a frenzy level of Charlie. But that we're always somewhere in that zone of it's never quite calm. It's never the same thing twice. That's why I love it. That's why I won't move.
It's so funny for such a big state that you could hit the nail on the head with that statement for just a small city in such a large state. I mean, like a good portion of Pennsylvania on the eastern side of Pennsylvania is very much summed up by Philly sports fanatics, and It's Always Sunny.
Yeah, it's and it's interesting because PA is such a huge state, but it's so largely just kind of inconsequential. To where like Pennsylvania natives will call it Pennsyltucky, where it's Philadelphia and Pittsburgh bisected by essentially Kentucky.
Northern Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean it is diverse, but
very interesting landscape.
Yeah, but like on the outside looking in, as much as I like Pittsburgh, we did a whiskey from Pittsburgh actually. If you can get your hands on it, it's called Wiggle, Wigle.
Okay.
Surprisingly, God damn it.
It's a lot of motorcycles.
I had to showboat a little bit. It was the first we did for the podcast, and it was spectacular good. Like we're 20 or so whiskeys in, and that's still pretty squarely in our top 5.
All right.
So
you said Wiggle, Wigle?
Yeah.
Correct.
If I can't imagine it's out there, it's pretty small, but it's an award-winning small batch distillery, and it is incredible.
Awesome. We'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, something for sure to keep in mind. It's really freaking good.
I think it's definitely on the better end of bourbons that I've had personally.
That was the other fun thing about Wiggle is like Chris and I both came into this podcast thinking like, all right, it's Irish whiskey or nothing. Like bourbon it is what it is, whatever. And we've started to enjoy a lot of bourbons just by by doing it. I mean, for us,
I think we were
bourbon
just drinking the wrong ones.
It was Jack Daniels. That's what we
Yeah.
had in our head. It was like bourbon, Jack Daniels. But that's really
Yep.
like the bottom of the barrel for bourbon.
Yeah, it's a very basic, not anything to blow your socks off. I mean, I like some of Jack Daniel's stuff too, but it's
Tennessee honey ain't bad.
certainly not. Yeah, you can get a lot of different stuff that will suit your palate a heck of a lot better.
For sure. So even though you didn't ask, we're going to give you our opinions on those from Colorado because
Oh yeah, please.
what's fair is fair, and we wouldn't be the people of Philadelphia if we didn't tell you what we thought about you. And we just kind of both came to the same general conclusion, and it's the same thing as PA, where we're taking a very small section of people and applying it to the whole state. But we're picturing somebody probably works remotely, skis all the time, stoned 17 and a half hours a day, sleep the rest. Something kind of in that, just letting life pass by kind of area.
I was picturing 80s One Piece.
Well, yeah, Chris took a different direction.
80s One Piece like snowsuits for going on the going skiing and snowboarding on the mountain. That was my main thing.
Like Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah, that was my main thing.
So
it really comes out of a form of jealousy that none of our mountains are really that great out here. So like, I just really would rather be skiing in Colorado, but it is what it is.
That's true. Yeah, our mountains are pretty much water ice or Italian ice for those who aren't from Pennsylvania.
All right, fair.
We're not good with words.
No, I think there's a good chunk of Colorado that definitely, same kind of thing, definitely hits the nail on the head for a pretty good chunk of that. It is amazing that with Colorado being one of the earlier ones to legalize the marijuana, that is the opinion that's just permeated the country is, well, everybody there is just stoned all the time. That's all they do. But
it's probably just less common for people to even think about it that way. It's probably like somebody's like smoking a joint on the street and they're like, okay, whatever. Here, it's like you see somebody smoking a joint on the street and it's like, huh, that's interesting. That's new.
There was also like a mass migration from like Philadelphia specifically. I have 8 friends that when Colorado legalized it, it was like the Ice Age. Everybody just migrated to this place, this nirvana of sorts. So that's, I think, why a lot of people have that connotation.
Oh, the population boom was crazy after that got legalized, but it's not quite as just open about it as you would think. So technically, you can't smoke it like you would a cigarette. It's got to be on your private property. It's got to be out of out of the public in general. Now, does that stop people from doing it in public? Absolutely not. You go to a concert at Red Rocks and the whole place is just nothing but a big pot cloud. But I mean, it's definitely permeated its way into the lore of Colorado.
I think it was interesting too because I feel like it was legalized in Colorado, and then it took a pretty long time before it became legalized anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean,
it wasn't.
It's still not
it wasn't
here.
it wasn't a right away kind of thing.
Yeah. It's still something that I think will continue to kind of become more and more normalized, but it is crazy how quickly it kind of hit out here and then just didn't catch on many other places.
Yeah, I mean, Pennsylvania is a very conservative state to the point where, I mean, I know this sounds weird. I don't know if you're familiar with Pennsylvania liquor laws, but there's one store in the state of Pennsylvania where you can buy liquor. Like you can't go to Mike's Liquors or like Downtown Liquors or anything like that. Every store is fine wine and good spirits, and the state owns them, and you can't go anywhere else or buy it on Sundays.
That's not true. Not in every county.
Oh, right, yeah.
Not in every county. There are
counties where that's the
like
case.
blue counties or something. I think it's called. I don't remember what it is, but there's certain
it's called
things
blue laws.
Blue laws. Yeah, you can't do certain things on Sundays, but I know you can buy liquor here on Sundays in this county. But yeah, it does make it makes it inconvenient because Brandon's from Pennsylvania, but I'm originally from New Jersey, and we had the ability to go into a liquor store and purchase beer, liquor, wine, whatever you want. And then here it's separated into 2 markets. It's separated into a beverage distributor where you can go and get beers and things of that nature. And then you would have to go to a liquor store, a state store, if you wanted to get wine or any type of spirit. And
Gotcha.
I found that it's a double-edged sword in some ways.
They're all the same. So
yeah, I mean,
there's no selection difference.
It's annoying in the sense that, you have to go to 2 different places. I have found it's made beer a little bit more interesting in Pennsylvania than it is in New Jersey because since it's only a beer store, usually it's a huge selection of beer and they have a big market for it out in Pennsylvania as well. Liquor becomes the second fiddle to that.
Yeah,
Pennsylvania.
I mean, you're fancy if you bring liquor to a party. If you bring beer, you're just someone's dirtbag cousin Eddie.
Nice, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's odd for sure, but it gets the job done.
I actually
What was
credit
it?
Colorado's liquor laws to the kind of craft industry that's out here, because for a long time, there's no state-run liquor stores, but you're only allowed one liquor license in the state for a very long time. So every liquor store was its own entity, which means, we got to compete with them, we got to compete with them. And I think that allowed, each store to say, yeah, we'll bring in more craft, and then more craft starts popping up. The laws are kind of changing a little bit, and that's a whole another thing to get into another time. But that's definitely, I do credit Colorado for that being a big reason why the craft industry is as booming as it is.
So I remember what I wanted to say. A couple sentences back, you'd mentioned the atmosphere at Red Rock. So I'm assuming you've been. Is it as magical as everybody on the East Coast imagines it to be?
100%. I can't hype it up enough. And no matter how much I tell you it's awesome, if you come see a concert here, you'll be like, yep, he didn't do it justice. It's even better than he could have said.
Who did you see?
I've seen a few concerts there. So I saw the John Butler Trio a couple of times. I've seen Jack Johnson, and I've actually kind of sort of played Red Rocks. So
really, tell me,
yeah.
you got to finish that sentence.
So it's how I proposed to my wife, actually. I had a whole thing set up. I told her we were going to go hike around, and then set a guitar up on the stage, set a couple of chairs and stuff. And it was a weekend morning. I think it was a Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. And so there's tons of people there in the morning, exercising, running up and down the stairs, because Colorado's a bunch of health nuts. Before they smoke their pot, they all got to go run the stairs. But so just tons of people in the stands, a few hundred people probably, picked up the guitar, played a song right there on the stage, and then that's how I proposed. So I like to make that as my claim to fame, that I've played Red Rocks.
That's amazing. That's a great story.
Dude, the bar is ridiculously high. Do you know how many fights you caused that day?
Yeah.
Anybody who was dating there got yelled at the whole way home. You proposed to me at a Denny's. What the hell?
Hey, there's nothing wrong
maybe.
with 2 a.m. Denny's proposal.
No.
You set a bar a bunch of guys in attendance will never live up to. That's awesome.
That is really cool. Good for
That
you.
was, yeah. She was worth it, so I had to do something. I had to go well above to try and, impress her. So
Did you consider yourself a pretty good musician? Like, were you pretty comfortable up there?
No, not at all. I can play the guitar decently, but my voice does not lend itself to singing pleasant tones.
You know what? You got the job done. So now we got 2 reasons to go to Colorado. We got Red Rock, and then we got the whiskey selection out there. Sounds pretty awesome to check out.
It does, for sure. Did you play an original, or was it a cover?
No, it was a cover. It was actually a John Butler song.
I'm honestly not familiar. Are you?
Not really, no.
Is he like a kind of like a local artist, or?
No, he's actually Australia. He's from Australia.
Oh.
Kind of a
super not local.
Bluegrass. Yeah, super not local. Kind of bluegrass, acoustic rock sort of vibe. If you like,
so a little Zach Bryan-y
really
kind
of. What's that?
A little like Zach Bryan-y kind of.
Not familiar with that one.
We might be getting.
Do you know?
Too.
I guess so. Yeah, he's like a country folk singer who's kind of getting popular at the moment. The reason he played Red Rocks last year in the rain, and that's why I wanted to go so bad.
Gotcha. But, I think if you took the country out, a little bit more folk, a little bit more kind of bluegrass sort of vibe, I think you'd be more on track with kind of that type of music.
You'd be hitting Colorado pretty hard with the folk bluegrass.
Yeah, that seems right up their alley for sure.
Oh yeah,
that's funny.
But
absolutely,
man, dude, that's freaking cool. I knew we were meeting up with a guy who enjoyed whiskey. I did not know he had played the most iconic concert venue probably in the United States.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
It's my claim to fame.
Dude, I would tell anybody who would listen, I'd have it on the back of my shirt.
Absolutely.
Like, you couldn't tell me shit
every shirt
after I played Red Rocks.
To have like a disclaimer on the back. I played Red Rocks.
Yeah. Like, they tell you to wait in line at a restaurant. Excuse me, ma'am. I played Red Rocks. Sir, please come by.
That's amazing.
Oh man, dude, that's
awesome.
That's why we love the Let's Drink About It segment. This was supposed to be about state stereotypes, and it's a lot like going to a bar with people. You learn so much that you never intended to set out to learn. So it's my favorite part of the show. I do the rest because we got to pretend to be serious, but this is where the rubber hits the road, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
We've definitely been known to go way off tangent in the past.
Yeah, we got
last podcast was way off.
Last podcast started with actually, that's a fun we can do again. If you have another 5 minutes or so, you can spare us real quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we were talking about if you budget's not a thing. If you could build your dream bar, where are you putting it, and what's it known for?
Ooh, that's a tough one. The where are you putting it's probably the hardest part to answer for me, because I think it would have to be somewhere in the Rocky Mountains, close enough that it's not, driving up a weird switchback path to get there. But
yeah, because you got to make it home somehow after a couple of whiskeys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'd probably do it in maybe Salida, Colorado, which is kind of out west, a little southwest of Denver. Actually, a ways southwest, about 2.5 hours. I'd probably build it there.
Colorado, Denver.
Yeah.
Yep. And then if it's known for anything, it's going to be known for whiskey and hockey. That's going to be what it's known for.
Good choice.
So is it going to be? Just to drill down a little bit deeper, if you're known for hockey, that's one thing. Is this going to be a sports bar, or is this going to be a dive with that you go to for the Is it going to be a local dive or a sports bar?
Oh, it'd be a sports bar for sure.
Okay.
It'd be Colorado sports, Colorado whiskeys. It'd just be, right up the Mile High Bourbon alley. It'd be Colorado top to bottom.
That's awesome. Amazing. We love it. Well, we look forward to that potentially becoming a real thing one day, and then we'll be out there celebrating.
Yeah, that's definitely the most down the middle, straight and narrow answer since you've been asking that question. The one that came up last week, I forget how we got talking about it, but the segment ended with tentative plans to open up a gay bar in South Philadelphia.
All right.
Oh my god, I don't remember.
I thought that's where you were going with that.
I don't remember what we were going to call it, honestly.
Me either, but I don't want to get flagged again.
It was something ridiculous. If we remember it, we'll bring it up again. We could obviously go look at it, but that's no fun.
No, it was just natural, but
no, it's got to come back to you for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
a couple more whiskeys, it just might.
Yeah, that was a night where I don't think we were driving or anything, so it had definitely a couple more glasses in us for sure. But Zach, man, dude, thank you so much for coming on. This was a ton of fun. Who knew there's so many similarities between PA and Colorado and their whiskey scenes and Zach's dream bar. Dudes that played the stage at Red Rocks. This has been our most educational episode ever. And if you guys haven't heard enough and you want to learn more about Colorado whiskey, more about the guy who's going to teach you how to drink it and where to buy it, make sure you check out @Mile High Bourbon on Twitter. And he is your guide to all things Colorado, all things booze. Zach, man, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
As far as us, we will see you all in 2 weeks with a fresh whiskey. And keep an eye for us on Zach's podcast at some point in the near future. We're going to work on getting that scheduled. But till then, this is another episode of the Whiskey Gingers podcast. Peace.